Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We have another fantastic show lined up for tonight with Lloyd De Jongh, Lloyd, this would be Lloyd's 12th show with us tonight.
Yeah,
And goodness, the audio did not mute, and I thought I had it muted, and
that's me.
apparently not.
My bad. That was me.
Oh, okay. Well, I think and I had muted another video, and it still was going live. We are on the backup channel tonight. It's a hot topic. We wanted to be able to give people the chance to use the super chat and things like that to post up questions, anything they want to post up. So we haven't used the backup channel for a couple of months. Figured we'd do that tonight. So welcome everybody who's already here. Hopefully we'll get a lot more people showing up here in the next few minutes. I did post a video on the other channel that it would be here tonight. Lloyd, welcome back.
Thank you.
And let's see, you've been working on a document for several months on the Muslim Brotherhood in America, and I've read several versions of it. I appreciate you sending me that. We're going to be covering the Muslim Brotherhood, what they're about, their creators, their size, etc., how much influence and impact they have in the West. Most people don't think that Islam poses any threat in the West whatsoever. They keep all focus and attention on the Jews and actually focus on Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood just simply really isn't allowed. And it's astonishing to see how ignorant people are of the teachings and beliefs and, in fact, the influence that Islam has on the West. Would you agree with that?
That's deliberate. One, you choose a different enemy to demonize so that you take the heat off yourself, so you can operate without interference.
Right, and then you've got them slipping in the back door everywhere, and everybody's looking the other direction at the scapegoat, saying it's them over there when the guy is
Mhm.
standing behind you in your kitchen. So
Yeah.
anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to be going through some of the content of your Muslim Brotherhood article tonight, as well as just kind of covering the general topic. So why don't we start off? How did you begin investigating the Muslim Brotherhood?
I felt that there, amongst other things, there had to be a central source that, because I saw a similarity within the messaging, within the online community, YouTube, Facebook. When I was engaging in my online discussions and debates with various people and on various issues and topics, there was a similarity of messaging, as if this was all centrally arranged. And also, I saw that messages would be within less than 72 hours. I saw that a common message, almost verbatim, was spread around the entire world. So, on a couple of topics, once or twice, I refuted extensively certain arguments that Islamic apologists were using. Within a very short order, I discovered that a rebuttal to that, not a very good one, but a standardized reply, had been distributed worldwide in multiple different countries, because I was spending time deliberately kicking the hornet's nest, as it were, going to various sites to try to find how these people operate, what they say, what's their story, what's their narrative. And so there's definitely central coordination, but also um, I'd learned about them probably accidentally, that there was an organization that was intent on imposing Islam with its Sharia, which is a global religion as well as a global government all over the world. They were intending to impose it. I'm not sure exactly where I found out about them, but I was feeling the effect of a centralized organization, and they seemed to best fit the bill. And I also started learning that Islam has what's called, you have the Ummah, which is the Islamic community, but you also have the Ulama, which is the learned ones, which is, in essence, the central governing body of Islam. Who exactly precisely they are, no one knows. It's a secret. But obviously, Al Azhar University would feature heavily in that, and they are Egyptian, and the Muslim Brotherhood are Egyptian in origin.
Another thing that we began to notice during our two series previously, the 11 shows that we had done together, was that the neo-Nazis and Islamists were using the exact same talking points, and
Yeah, yeah,
it
definitely.
was absolutely verbatim. And when we refuted one, the whole network of shills would stop using that point and then shift to one of these new
Next one.
points. But
And
they would go through a whole laundry list, boom, 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 boom.
yeah,
And none, as we began to go through all of these, almost none of them were true. I had started going through the Talmud. I'm still working on finishing up the document. It grew much larger than I had originally planned. It's now 100 pages. And so as I was going through, I've checked about 70 of them, and then I found more that I may go through and add. It just kind of gets redundant, though. But out of the 70 that I verified, one was correct. So we're talking about like a 1.3 or 1.4% accuracy of all of these quotes. So
well, the quote may be accurate, but was the context correct? Were they interpreting it correctly? They might have quoted it correctly.
well, what I had found was that 1/3 of the quotes were entirely made up, and that the other 2/3 were drastically taken out of context. And then what they would do is, there's a Talmud that's kept 40 floors below street level. It's
Yeah.
only brought out on the full
Well,
moon and in June and this kind of stuff. And you have to
yeah.
be a Jew part. And they had no evidence of this secret Talmud.
Something that I notice is they always say, well, Talmud Tosafot Jeroboam ladder 37c, it says Jews can steal your wallet and it's fine. And I would always notice they never actually quoted the actual Talmud. They never actually quoted the Talmud. So I started asking in the comments online, quote me the actual paragraph, because the Talmud is not divided into short 5-word sentences. It's actually paragraphs of debate and discussion. And
And legalese.
yeah, and only on one occasion did someone actually quote a full 3 or 4 sentences. And of course, I mean, again, out of context and try to lie about it. But I've noticed they don't quote the entire thing. They don't, because if you've read the Talmud, if you know the Talmud, you'll know that that thing would be would be 40 to 50 paragraphs, and one paragraph is going to be 10 or 12 sentences. Why don't you quote the entire paragraph surrounding those 5 words you've paraphrased?
And what you have in the Talmud, what it is it's a series of law books, and the rabbis back then, just like imams today, would decide the law. And so they would have debates between each other over topics. So one rabbi would say, something negative, which of course, would be the one line that all of the neo-Nazis, Islamists, et cetera, quote. And then you have
Yeah, but
10,
that might
10 pages of discussion about how that statement is not true. So they only quote the one line, but they omit the 10 pages of how it's not true.
yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood. So what's fascinating is that this is the world's largest secret society. It is the largest secret organization on earth. Now, their spiritual leader, their previous spiritual leader, would have a radio show once a week, and he would have 60 million listeners. Now, the group is estimated by many to have about 100 million members and adherents. Right, 100 million adherents. Now, this is this is something like 9 times larger than the population of Jews on the planet.
Right, exactly. But, the 1.8 billion Muslims and 100 million members of the Muslim Brotherhood is not as big a threat as 16 million Jews were told to believe.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few things. So what's interesting is as I'm tracking what's happening online and what people are saying, obviously this provides opportunities to go and research the nonsense these people are saying. So very intelligent, very clever sounding some very clever sounding arguments, very false, but give us some time in the near future. We will start once again, just like we demolished the lies about the Talmud, we will start demolishing the lies that these idiots have been saying for decades, simply based on facts, primary sources, and we'll reveal just what idiots these people are. But let's get started, because the
Sure.
Muslim Brotherhood is a very serious problem. Very serious organization, highly funded, highly organized, incredibly disciplined, very effective. So they need to be treated with some degree of respect, um, as a credible threat. So obviously, a lot of this assumes some knowledge of what we've done in terms of Islam before, and we will go back and forth. I won't read every single word in the document, but we will want to touch on ideological warfare and their attempts to overthrow the American government, infiltrate and overthrow, and their ideological warfare on American culture. Europe, the same comes for Europe. So, short version: Hassan al-Banna is the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, also known as the Ikhwan, and he was so he founded the organization in 1928, and he summarized their universal mission as follows. He says, "Our task is to stand against the flood of modernist civilization overflowing from the swamp of materialistic and sinful desires, essentially from the West." So he wants to go back to the early days of Muhammad, right? He's a Salafi. He wants to go back to the religion of the founder, the way Muhammad and his faithful companions practiced Islam, which was the most barbaric time in its history.
Which was
Right.
drinking camel urine, beating wives, killing slaves, etc.
All of the above. Yeah. So this flood has swept Muslim nations away from the Prophet's leadership and Quranic guidance and deprived the world of its guiding light. This would be Islam. Western secularism moved into a Muslim world already estranged from its Quranic roots, right? And he says, and we will drive this from our lands. And not only that, we will not stop at this point. We will pursue this evil force, which is Western culture and civilization, into its own land, invade its Western heartland, and struggle to overcome it until all the world shouts the name of the Prophet and the teachings of Islam spread throughout the world. Only then will Muslims achieve their fundamental goal, and there will be no more persecution, quote unquote, and all religion will be exclusively for Allah. They are deeply intent on creating a one world religion and a one world government under Islam. So now they are essentially what we could call an incubator, the template for all modern jihad terror organizations. In fact, they're responsible for the majority of Sunni terror groups in the world. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna called the group Allah's Battalion, in other words, a military battalion. He then also went on to create what he called their special apparatus or secret apparatus, which is their armed wing. Interestingly, so this was formed in 1935. Now, some would say that they're, and I've been told this, that they're a non-violent organization. Well, that is absolutely not true. I'm not going to go into some of the specific history, but they've been involved in numerous assassinations and so on, and killings and uprisings, and also funding and creating other groups. We'll touch on some of that. But also the armed wing of the Muslim Brotherhood was formed in conjunction with the help of a man called Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Hajj Amin al-Husseini was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. He was the Jew-hating Grand Mufti of Jerusalem who also voluntarily joined the Nazis and was promoted to general in the SS.
And wasn't
And
that the Waffen SS 13th Hanjar Division?
correct, 13th Mountain Division, correct.
Right, and that
And
was
also,
the Bosnian division that slaughtered tens of thousands of Serbs, actually.
and he joined. Actually, let me actually get some notes here so that people can actually see this.
Sure.
Uh, so, so mind if I share my screen, then I can
Yeah,
actually
go
show
ahead. Yeah.
what I want to. So I'm just going to move this over. And I'm going to share this. So Hajj Amin al-Husseini became a general in the SS. He then also started to form the largest SS division, which had almost 30,000 soldiers. So they were the largest the largest division in the SS was the Islamic division. And by all accounts, he raised there were a total of 600,000 Muslims that were fighting on the side of the Nazis. And he joined the Nazis to kill Jews, to fight the British and the Americans. Those are his words. So,
do you want to make that full screen?
sure.
I'm only seeing it in half the screen there. There you go.
Yeah, except then it moves over to the side like that, which is a bit weird, you know.
Okay.
But okay, so this is Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, or Palestine at the time, as it was called then, British Palestine with Hitler. This is him inspecting and saluting with the Nazi salute his troops. Notice the fezzes. These are the troops that he raised.
Wait, doesn't their hat look a lot like the Shriners in that last photo?
We'll get into that. God bless Hitler. Now, this is a very common sentiment, and we will discuss a bit more about that in a moment. This is one of their symbols. This is the Islamic scimitar with the Nazi symbol. This is the fez, which, as you said, it exactly looks like the the Shriner fez that we've discussed in the past. Look at the Nazi symbol. You'll see it here with the death's head, right? So here we have a close-up view of that. That's the Nazi eagle, Nazi symbol, and the death's head. And this is the fez that contains those. Here they are. Again, they're reading a book called Islam und Judentum, Islam and Judaism. Right, this is an example of a Nazi soldier with the death's head and the symbol, and it's the same symbol on these fezzes. So you can see a Nazi officer with that symbolism right there. There we go. That's another fez with an officer giving the salute. And here he is having a lovely lunch with various SS officers. So apparently this man is Yasser Arafat's uncle, was the head of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and apparently also an ex-KGB agent, meaning Yasser Arafat. Now, he also was responsible for a great deal of violence and also the killing of numerous Jews. He was very much against having them move out of Europe and into the Israel. So, any questions or any comments on that so far?
No, keep going on that.
So, what happened is that they franchised essentially that they created a template for the approach to terror. Now, the head of Al Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, their spiritual leader, is a Muslim brother. Then bin Laden was a Muslim brother. And even al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, is a Muslim brother. So these are all offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood. So the Muslim Brotherhood, while it may or may not directly engage in violence, it sponsors, creates, funds, trains, and guides other organizations that do engage in incredible amounts of violence. Now, so the Ikhwan special apparatus was founded with Hajj Amin al-Husseini, right, the Nazi Mufti. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood used to glorify Hitler, and they had a newspaper called Al-Nazir, and it used to write articles with rumors and claims that Hitler had converted to Islam since he was implementing Islamic policies. In other words, the murder of the Jews, which is part of the Islamic doctrine, was something that they felt was Hitler was implementing this. And they used to chant, Allah is alive, Allah is alive, Haji Muhammad Hitler is coming.
And just to interject there, in my show with Todd recently on the Thule Society's influence on the Nazi Party and Baron von Sabatendorf, it appears that there is a direct connection there. Are you aware of the claim that Prince Charles of England also converted to Islam?
Look, there's lots of rumors. Unless we have more solid proof, it's very hard to say. Unless we have circumstantial evidence that's extensive. I've heard rumors, but I can't give any credence because I don't think there's enough evidence.
There are definitely some interesting photos of him in some Islamic garb for certain.
Agreed. I mean, there's lots of interesting things, tidbits, and facts, but we don't know. We can't. It's really difficult to act on that.
Agreed.
With that degree of that lack of information. So yeah, I'm aware of that, but it's not something I can credit right now. Now, there's a great deal of these people exert. Now, I need to mention there was a previous organization that everyone knows as the Soviet Union, right, with their communist international propaganda. They wanted to take over the world and impose communism across the entire world, right? And they had their manifesto, as does the Muslim Brotherhood have their manifesto. Now, it is known that the Muslim Brotherhood, right, is heavily funded by Saudi, by Qatar, and other governments. Now, Saudi Arabia alone spends 3 times the annual budget on promoting Islam, on essentially indoctrinating and infiltrating, subverting, funding, bribing, whatever you want to call it, various organizations around the world they spend it on political lobbying, they spend it in universities, they spend it on think tanks to become Islam friendly. They spend 3 times the money that the Soviet Union spent at the height of their power. So if the Soviet Union, and you see now, if you look at the American political stage right now, the Democratic presidential debates, communism was openly being discussed by every presidential candidate. Open socialism discussed by presidential candidates in America. So clearly there's been some kind of effect with all of the funding, all of the infiltration that the communists have done that's having a visible effect. Now, if the Saudis are spending 3 times more than the Soviets did, what effect are they having? And it's not unusual. It's been well known that you have the green-red alliance, the green-red axis. So you've got the Muslims and the communists working together. This happened in Iran, for instance, where they worked together to seize power, and then the Muslims killed the communists. Right? So what you do have, for instance, you've got Muslim Brotherhood members unknown to lobby Congress. They have a Muslim Advocacy Day in May. Right. This started in 2015. It was organized by CARE.
Now CARE. Just to interject here, you're still showing the Nazi photos there. Is that intentional?
No, let me close that. So let me just stop sharing again.
Okay, sure. Here we go. Thanks. And also thank you, Erin, for posting up a $100 donation just now. She says, thank you so much for your work, Jan and Lloyd. It's very much appreciated.
No, I appreciate the thanks. Yeah, well, look, we do this. I think it's critical that people know. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood is very much still a work in progress. People are trying to figure out what they're doing, but I will let you know that work is ongoing. People are starting to unravel their secrets, right? So now, CARE started this major lobbying program in the US with the government in May 2015, right? CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations, right? They are an affiliate of Hamas. Hamas is a known terror organization, and they, of course, are based in what we call Palestine. Now, Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and CARE is a member of Hamas or part of Hamas. So they are all Muslim Brotherhood. And people like Linda Sarsour, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and various others are also associated and affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. So, and this is important. We'll get to that in a while. So, any comments or questions?
No, let's just keep plugging through. We got a lot to cover today.
Okay, so perhaps I should share the screen again and then work through the other document. So I'll put the document on screen, the one that we are going to be going through. And I will share that, the main screen. Okay, is that up?
Yes, it is now.
Okay, so brief overview of the Muslim Brotherhood. So the Muslim Brotherhood, okay. So in 1991, a transport policeman, I'll get into the details, we'll get to that, but just to give a brief overview, discovered a woman on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge filming the struts of the bridge, found this was suspicious, called it in, and this eventually led to the largest terror funding trial in US history. The people that were discovered filming the struts of the bridge fled the country. I believe he went to Qatar. We'll get into all those details. But what they found was a secret basement in his house. And this basement happened to hold 80 boxes of archived documents. This happened to be the secret archive of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. These documents have been presented at trial. They were discovered by the FBI, they were presented at trial, and they have never been contested. They've been taken, even the defendants never contested the accuracy and authenticity of these documents. So I call this, do not let your enemy know he's your enemy. We have a saying, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, etc. But there's this saying in Islam, do not let your enemy know he's your enemy. Right? Use them until you no longer need them. Now, in October 2010, the Muslim Brotherhood Supreme Guide, Muhammad Badi, that's their new leader, declared war on America. This was a call for political jihad, like the communist revolution, because Islam, as we know, is a political system and a military system, as well as a very small portion of it being religious. A very tiny portion of it is dedicated to what we would think of going to paradise, going to heaven. Now, the deputy described the mission of the Muslim Brotherhood as our main and overall mission is the subjugation of people to Allah on the earth. So they have to establish the rise of the Ummah and all civilization on the basis of Islam and subjugate all people to Allah on the earth. So now they want to target conservative groups, the political right, social media organizations. They actually, there's a Saudi prince who owns more Twitter stock than does Jack Dorsey. He has a controlling share within Twitter, right? Of course, you've got these trust and safety councils and YouTube, Facebook, and all these other social media groups as well.
Why do you suppose that Jack Dorsey didn't disclose that on the Joe Rogan show?
You tell me. You tell me. Okay, so obviously they infiltrate churches and religious organizations. It's you have these interfaith dialogues which are incredibly fraudulent. And they also infiltrate intelligence and law agencies. They try to undermine them, try to infiltrate them, provide the wrong information so that they have the wrong idea of what's going on. So their threat doctrine is just the Sharia. Everything is aligned with the Sharia. They will also utilize, obviously, successful communist propaganda techniques simply because those have been proven to work, and they'll use those to destabilize countries and that so that they can then ultimately impose, and they'll work alongside the communists until they can impose their agenda. Right now, as we know, Sharia, as we've discussed in our previous episodes, is totalitarian, and it's antithetical to the West. So the Muslim Brotherhood is the number one group propagating Sharia in the West. They're not the only one, but they are certainly the biggest, best funded. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
And it's very closely related to or similar to communism. So it becomes sort of a theological system that that communism can overlay on top of itself.
Yeah, I recently posted a video with Putin saying that communism was a religion that was created by the communists with Lenin as its leader, as its god.
Wow.
Very interesting discussion. I can actually give you a link to that. So anyway, so remember, Islam defies Western constitutional law. For instance, religious tolerance. If you look at Quran 385, if anyone desires a religion other than Islam, never will it be accepted of them, right? There's no such thing as freedom of speech, equality between sexes. And of course, the Muslim and the Kafir, I mean, people go on about the Goy, which means nations. It's a biblical term. It even refers to the Jews as well as non-Jews. God, in Genesis 12:2, God calls the Jews Goy. The Kafir, though, is a highly derogatory term. Essentially, it refers to us as beasts, as not human, subhumans. You may have heard that from the Nazis. That's what the kafir means. It's a completely different level of negativity as opposed to the supposed negativity of the word goy. Now, Sharia is unalterable, okay? And the differences that we see within Islamic governments, now the Muslim Brotherhood claims that there is no single pure Sharia government or Islamic government on the planet. And they're working to establish one. They seized political control in Egypt, and they were thrown out a year later because people revolted at the way that they were running the government, the dictatorial way they were running the government, destroying the economy and just ruining people's lives. And when they were thrown out of Egypt effectively and declared a terrorist organization by various governments in the region, they decided to hit the soft targets, which is Europe and America. So they've stepped up their operations in our part of the world. So now the difference that we see across Islamic governments is simply the varying levels of Sharia enforcement, right? Notice that you've seen Libya, right, becoming extremely Sharia compliant. Now you've got open-air slave markets. Syria, right, the more Islam, the more violence. Malaysia is becoming a lot more Salafist. Nigeria becoming a lot more violent. And Brunei recently.
Yeah, we discussed Brunei recently and their passing of homosexual laws, etc., that there was such an international uproar they had to repeal them.
Yep, they were going to stone women to death for adultery, stone men to death for adultery, stone people to death for being gay. stone people to death for apostasy, for leaving the religion. Yes. So this is becoming widespread. This is being pushed. So now, and this is all very much due to the Muslim Brotherhood's influence. Now, their first organization was a thing called the Muslim Students Association. There were 29 organizations in 1991 that were Muslim Brotherhood fronts. Today, there's probably 500, right? No one knows exactly, but it was 29 3 decades ago. It's a great deal more today. Right now, they are the most influential entity within political Islam, right?
Now,
And they
aren't the Muslims just, poor, uneducated brown people without the financial backing to really be a threat? Isn't that the narrative that we hear out there?
well, I mean, as we know, if you're a very, very powerful oil-rich country, that makes you extremely poor.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So you're going to be poor because you get all of the money from all of the countries, all of the industrial nations who need your oil. So that would make you extremely poor. That makes sense.
And means you don't have money. It means that you don't have these super rich princes from Saudi Arabia that, yeah,
And
you
and,
don't
and
have.
not and not only that, they wouldn't go to our universities, Harvard, Yale. They wouldn't go to Oxford, et cetera, to get training and learn exactly the things that we teach our people either.
Yeah, I think 8 out of the 10 major super yachts in the world are owned by Arab Muslims. I need to check those numbers, but I think 7 or 8 of the top super yachts in the world. We did discuss it once. I did show you those figures once, and then you have these private jets. You've got lavish lifestyles. These are very, very wealthy people. Think about it. How do they afford to pay more money? How does Saudi Arabia alone spends 3 times the budget the entire Soviet Union did on propaganda?
Right. And we also exposed several episodes ago about how they use Palestine to tug on the liberal humanitarian thing to push their entire agenda, so that the liberals hate their own country, and then they believe that the
Yeah, we'll get
Palestinians
into
are
that.
poor.
We'll get into that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So Albana said it is the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations, and to extend its power to the entire planet. So the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood until November 2018 was Yusuf al-Qaradawi. And he stated their objective is the establishment of an Islamic state under Sharia in Egypt, in all Muslim states, and in all states in the world. This is a prelude to the re-establishment of a worldwide Islamic caliphate, which will dominate the whole globe. And as you know, Islam is Jewish, Saudi Arabia is Jewish, Yusuf al-Qaradawi is Jewish.
Yeah,
And
everything is the Jews, and is the Islamists are incapable of doing anything themselves. Everything is, they were taken
and they
over
don't
by
have,
the Jews, right? That's the official narrative.
so, and of course, the Quran is a Jewish book. And, yeah, whatever. So
Obviously, folks who didn't catch that, Lloyd was being snarky and
I was
facetious.
being
So
sarcastic. Yes. For the record, I was being incredibly sarcastic. Okay. And as the nice liberals will tell us, these brown people aren't able to do anything for themselves.
yeah, 1.8 billion brown people are just completely incompetent and incapable. I hear that almost every single day, Lloyd.
I know. So anyway, so these are Salafists. They're patient. They're ruthless, right? So now President Sisi of Egypt has requested President Trump to declare them a terror organization, right?
Right.
And these are the identifiers. Notice the peaceful organization has 2 swords. This is the new identifier on the right here. Again, 2 crossed swords.
Well, don't the 2 crossed swords, don't they really symbolize the wings of the dove?
They do. I was thinking, yeah, why can't they use a pillow filled with dove feathers? That
Right. Yeah. Sure. Of course.
So anyway, so this is their motto. Allah is our objective. The Prophet is our leader. The Quran is our law. Jihad is our way. Dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. To die in the way of Allah is their highest hope. So, yeah. So anyway.
And I had noticed yesterday you had found another article that substantiated the whole idea that I had figured out with Todd back in, I think, March, that Islam worships will versus Christianity worshiping logos or truth.
Yeah. So the Muslim Brotherhood has devoted the larger part of its involvement in public life to providing social services programs to the poor neighborhoods, including free clinics, food banks, academic and logistics support to poor college students. Sure, they did this in Egypt as well. They're doing it now in Jordan. They're doing this all over the world. But once they seized power, they became hardline radicals, the way the government of Iran has become, and they were kicked out within a year. Okay, so the logo has two swords, not an olive branch. Now you tell me, this guy's talking here about community service. So death in jihad is a form of community service,
Whereas
right?
Christians do good for their fellow man, they are about committing murder as community service.
Okay, so moving on. So as we know, jihad is defined in Sharia as fighting against non-Muslims to establish Islam, right? We've discussed this at length in the past. Fighting is prescribed for you. Slay them wherever you find them. This is from the Sharia. And this is from the Umdat al-Salik, or the Reliance of the Traveler, the most common, the most quoted, bought, sold, owned, and most available Sharia manual on the planet, right? So now they call the plan that they are using, which is subversion by stealth, they call civilization jihad. Right now, the methodology that they're using is predicated on a very sophisticated guerrilla warfare technology or idea, concept created by Chairman Mao. And this is called the People's War. So they've leveraged an existing strategy which allows them to recruit largely socialist dupes, right, who have a common anti-Western, anti-Christian goal. Now, the People's War involves moral propaganda. So there's a theme of victimization, fighting against the oppressor. You are the oppressed. And it is blended with these heroic, uplifting sentiments of victory and moral righteousness. Think Antifa, right? Except it is combined with calculated tactical acts of savage violence. This is to sap the enemy morale, make them feel subdued as per Quran 929, and boost the feeling of the resistance, boost the morale of the resistance through shows of strength. So it's brutal violence coupled with a morality that talks about, an ethic that talks about, we're the oppressed and we're fighting against the oppressor, we're doing righteous violence, right? So don't forget, it says in Quran 929, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, right, which would be non-Muslims. Now, what they've done is they've managed to co-opt a lot of the revolutionaries, because the communists are also, the socialists are also revolutionaries. They managed to co-opt them and utilize them for their own purposes. So these are unwitting dupes. Now, since Muhammad Badi took the helm of the Ikhwan in 2010, that's the Muslim Brotherhood, it spread to apparently 100 countries, largely covertly. Now, we've been able to track 60, maybe 80 countries, but different reports provide different numbers, okay? And they believe that they're close to success. Now, there was an apparent ideological split between Al-Qaeda and the Ikhwan. However, don't forget, the Ikhwan has a 5-stage plan, and Al-Qaeda has a 7-stage plan. 9/11 was the opening shot in their plan to take over the US. And it's a 21-year plan. So both of these plans, both these organizations, their plans terminate in approximately 2021. Now, Al-Qaeda was seen to be on track up to stage 5, almost stage 6. Right now, they probably are finding little stumbling blocks, but they all intend to make this happen in the next few years, this actual coup. Now, supposedly there's an ideological split, maybe not, right? We don't really know, but there has been splits within Al-Qaeda where some people felt they weren't being violent enough, hence you have ISIS. Now, so notice Muhammad Badi said in 2010, today the Muslims need to understand that the improvement and change that the Ummah seeks can only be attained through jihad and sacrifice, and by raising a jihadi generation that pursues death, just as the enemies pursue life. So many people claim that, these jihadis are a death cult, and this is where that quote comes from. But this is based on Islamic theology, but this is now where it's been verbalized by someone who is a religious leader. This guy, just like al-Baghdadi has a PhD in Islamic studies, this man is a full imam, right? So now they want to prevent fitna, which is oppression or suppression of Islam. In other words, the denial of Islam and the refusal to submit is oppression, and this must be fought because we are fighting against Allah by resisting, by not becoming Muslims. And also the term Islamophobia is a term that they created, right? Or if they didn't create it, at least they popularized it.
Right, and then you hear, the neo-Nazis love to spout that term too. Oh, you're an Islamophobe. I've seen that term hundreds of times since January when we started the series.
Correct. And okay, so what we have is, so in August 2004, top Brotherhood operative Ismail El-Barasi and his wife were pulled over. A Maryland Transportation Authority cop observed her videotaping the structural supports of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. I wonder why. So it was established he was wanted in connection with Hamas fundraising activities. FBI search warrant of his home in D.C., Washington, D.C., discovered a hidden sub-basement, and they found 80 boxes of materials. This led, so these documents became evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terrorism funding trial in the U.S., right? So they've given 12.4 million to Hamas, okay? And the point of the whole funding was that the Palestinian state would be created and they would eliminate the state of Israel through violent jihad. Now, the document, the most illuminating of these documents was the 1991 strategic plan. And the document, the 1991 plan is called the Explanatory Memorandum of the General Strategic Goals of the Group of May 22nd, 1991. Now, what we'll do is I'll give you a link to my online resource that you can put in the description after the show so that people can download these documents that I'm referencing. Right, I'll give you a link for that.
Do you want to just post it there in the chat for people while we're going here, or just send it after the show?
Yeah, hold on. So let me see where I can. I need to find the link to this. Let me just shift this over so I can just go and search for this. Yeah, it's going to take me a moment to just.
Sure, I didn't mean to distract you there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Let me tackle that at a different point. When you do the discussion, I can just go and grab the link. So now, what is interesting? This was written by Muhammad Akram, a top Muslim Brotherhood operative in the States, and it contains the mission statement of the Muslim Brotherhood in the US, right? And these are very concerning words. Their purpose is to destroy Western civilization from within by its own hands and the hands of the adherents. So the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process. What all the word means, the Ikhwan must understand their work in America is a grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within, sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. If you can find me these words in the Jewish Talmud, please send them. But we definitely have this from Islam, okay, from a very powerful organization with 100 million members and adherents. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes, and there's no escape from that destiny. Okay? So now someone's going to say, well, yeah, these are Salafi extremists. And there's 100 million of them.
Right. Well, and not only that, people need to understand what a quote unquote good Islamist is, which is one who follows the laws of Islam and forces the kafir, the non-believers, to submit or kills them. And a bad Islamist is one who does not follow the laws of the Sharia, the Hadith, the Quran, etc., and gets along with Christians, etc. So people need to understand that, a so-called extremist Muslim is one who actually follows what Islam teaches. It's not like you have a bad Christian who, lies and does bad things. These people are the good Islamists.
Yeah, agreed. So I'll get those links now. So there's an additional document called the Phases of the World Underground Movement Plan. So this is a 5-phase plan for the infiltration and an American coup. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood is recognized by themselves and by experts who analyze this as being in phase 4 of this plan since at least 2017, the start of 2017. Phase 5 is a violent coup. Now, these are the quotes from the document itself with their own self-assessment as to where they are. I'll read this. Phase 1, the phase of discreet and secret establishment of elite leadership. This phase has already been implemented in this country. Phase 2, the phase of gradual appearance on the public scene and exercising and utilizing various public activities. It greatly succeeded in implementing this. It also succeeded in achieving a great deal of its important goals, such as infiltrating various sectors of the government, gaining religious institutions and embracing senior scholars, gaining public support and sympathy, and establishing a shadow government secret within the US government. That was phase 2. This document's from 1991. Phase 3, escalation phase, prior to conflict and confrontation with the rulers through utilizing mass media, currently in progress. Right? Phase 4. Now this I think would sort of be around the time of 9/11, right? This would be where because 9/11, notice that Islam is a religion of peace, and the whole idea of Islam and pushing Islam happened right after 9/11, because this was a coordinated blitz. So you had the attack on the one hand as the starting gun, and then along with that, while everyone's demoralized and confused and angry, then you had the social media, the news blitz happening. And that's when they started pushing that. Phase 4, open public confrontation with the government through exercising the political pressure approach. It is aggressively implementing the above-mentioned approach. Say hello to Ilhan Omar. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Training on the use of weapons domestically and overseas in anticipation of 0 hour. It has noticeable activities in this regard. Training on the use of weapons. Now, notice Linda Sarsour, her spiritual advisor and leader, her mentor, his son was caught at a Utah compound, or remember there was the Islamic compound where they found the dead body, the starving children, where they were training these kids to be jihadis and to kill.
Is that the one in Kentucky recently, or which
That's
one?
the one. Yes, there were two. Two. Both of them managed by the son and of the spiritual leader of Linda Sarsour. And don't forget, there's I didn't add these in because these are things I needed time to research. I need to look deeper into this. But you've got Islamburg, and the leader there claims they've got about 20 or 22 facilities scattered around the US where they teach guerrilla tactics to jihadis.
And there's probably a lot more than that, you know.
Yeah, well, the ones we know about. So phase 5, seizing power to establish their Islamic nation under which all parties and Islamic groups are united. All the mentioned phases are preliminary steps to reach the above-mentioned phase. So they've established their secret leadership. They've established a secret government. So if you're blaming the government for 9/11, maybe you're going to ask yourself which faction within the government. So this is a list of organizations that they used to have. The MSA is a well-known one, the Muslim Students Association. They were established in 1962, so they've been around for a long time. And they are the breeding ground of a lot of these organizations. So these original 29 organizations from 1991. And it says, this is the list of our organizations and the organizations of our friends. So it's a distributed group, right? All under one banner. And these were 29 in 91, 29 groups. Today, as I said, there are hundreds of them.
I want to interject here, and we're going to cover this more in just a second, but this guy in the chat, he's going by Ron Paul or Die. He said, people are being trained to think in political correct legalese gobbledygook, quote-unquote, tolerance. That is exactly spot on. Yeah, no, it's tolerance is simply cowardice or delusion, but it's the unwillingness to speak up. It's the willingness to accept encroachment of your domain, right? Don't forget, there's a quote in Islam. Actually, I will get this for you. Let me just find this. There's a quote, Quran 13:41, and it's meant literally because the Quran is supposed to be the literal words of Allah.
Do they not see that we are advancing in the land, diminishing it by its borders on all sides? Right? Another version of the same verse. Have they not seen that we set upon the land, reducing it from its borders? They mean this literally. They are stealing everything they can and shrinking what you have left. Now, phase two is a gradual rollout of their stealth jihad, okay, infiltrating the government, and they've said they've achieved a lot of success. Phase three, conflict and confrontation. So, in other words, they're not non-violent. They're merely that the first phases of their plan are pre-violent, not non-violent, pre-violent. In phase four, they are going to engage with the government confrontationally. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and others. There are numerous Islamic congressmen and congresswomen and so on with Christian names.
Well,
Converts.
and then we have, presidents like Lyndon Johnson, et cetera, who were part of the Shriners, et cetera. So they're crypto Islamists.
They may well be. I mean, one would need to look at their record in terms of what they did. You can look at a lot of do we know if Obama was Muslim? Well, I mean, he grew up in a Muslim family. He's both his father and his supposed father and his stepfather were Muslims, which makes him patrilineally makes him a Muslim. He went to mosque and he went to Islamic school until he was 12. And he said that the most beautiful sound in the world was the sound of the azan in the morning. So yeah, well, one could say there's a fair argument, but if one looks at his record of actions, he was extremely pro-Islamic.
Right. Yeah, and there's videos out there saying, "Oh, well, he said he was a Christian, so therefore he wasn't practicing taqiyya." And
Hitler said he was a Christian too at one point.
Right.
It's called demagoguery.
Right. And another thing is that he was secretly in the middle of the night bringing in plane loads of Muslims and sticking them in Middle America.
I know. Well, think about this. One of those plane loads was 80,000 Somalis that they placed in a particular neighborhood, who happened to then elect a woman as Ilhan Omar.
Right.
Just sheer coincidence.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're a coincidence theorist, correct, which most liberals are.
So notice Ibn Khaldun is the most renowned Islamic historian. He was a philosopher, historian, and father of sociology, considered the father of sociology. He wrote these words: "Holy war is religious duty." In the Muslim community, the holy war is a religious duty because of the universalism of the Muslim mission and the obligation to convert everybody to Islam, either by persuasion or by force. The other religions did not have a universal mission, and holy war was not a religious duty for them, except for the purposes of defense. Islam is under obligation to gain power over other nations. That's in the Muqaddimah. Right.
And what did we say the percentage was of Islamic texts that deal with the subjugation and murder of non-believers? Wasn't it like 60-some% total?
If you look at Sira, which is his biography, it's about 67%. 67% is related to jihad. 51% of the Sira is related to the subjugation of the Kafirs.
Right. So that's a huge portion. And 14% is about the worship of Allah, correct?
Of the major texts here, only 14% is about Allah. The other 86% is about Muhammad, and only about 16% is about religion, what we would call religion, which is going to heaven. The rest of it is all about essentially jihad and politics and military methods.
And then, and just to reiterate, we had also exposed that Baphomet is another spelling of Muhammad.
Muhammad, yeah.
And I'll show that on screen here really quickly.
That's on Wikipedia, and that's on the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yeah, I'm going to show that on screen here really quickly. Here, let me just pull that up. Yeah, so it's a form of the name Muhammad used by medieval writers. Okay, so there it is right there, directly tied to Muhammad. And of course, Baphomet is the androgynous goat god that the Satanists use. And going back to what we said a bit ago, Islamists worship will, whereas Christians worship logos or truth. And so we have, like Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. It's all about the worship of will, which is Islam or Baphomet, Satanism. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, so Christianity is about God is truth. Jesus says, I'm the way and the truth, right? Islam is about will.
Absolutely, 100%.
So those are vastly different. I actually have that link, so I can pop that. I can give you this link right now to the folder, so people can go and start grabbing these documents. And let me just grabbing the links, just generating. Copy the link. So where do I give you the link?
Can you just post it in the chat, and if it doesn't post it, I'll approve it.
Okay, I'll just pop it in the chat now. So there we go.
Yeah,
I
there
just
you
popped
go.
it.
Yeah, it's already posted, so you're good.
So that should give people access to various other documents that I'm referencing, and we'll reference. Now, I'm not going to be able to get through everything. I think it's too much. So notice this is care. So now that I've covered the meat of it, so in the rest of the time, let me now I can skip around a little bit. Notice this is care. Okay, build a wall of resistance. Don't talk to the FBI. Right, and lawfare. One of their favorite tactics is what they call lawfare, creating as much disruption as possible. So in other words, if you are a Muslim and you drive a truck and your boss wants you to deliver alcohol, well, sue your company for $250,000 and get away with it. You know, this is what happens, and this is happening. CARE is basically making this the case so that they make us Sharia compliant. Now, the kafir must remain ignorant of the nature and the encroachment of Sharia and the threat that the Ikhwan represents. This is how they're going to implement their stealth jihad. The military term for this is information dominance, right? So if you don't understand the enemy's doctrine, how he thinks, what he's doing, and you accept these definitions of what things are, then you have the wrong picture in your head, right? You misperceive, you misunderstand, and you'll dismiss things. So look at these terms. It's religion of peace, raghead, towelhead, jockey, camel jockey. The religion was hijacked, people in caves, people with box cutters, nothing to do with Islam. These terms are designed to make you underestimate your enemy as intended. These terms are not organically grown. These terms were put out there specifically to deceive. Right now, they have infiltrated. Now, you know that they've been very heavily trying to infiltrate, obviously, the political right. One major name that has come up numerous times that I've seen is a man called Grover Norquist, who's been an enabler of the Muslim Brotherhood. However, the reason that they're trying to infiltrate the political right is that they've already successfully infiltrated the political left. So, Democratic Party. Now, Sun Tzu, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, right? And if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. But if you know yourself and not the enemy, then it's 50-50 possibility.
Well,
every victory gained. Yes?
And if you consider Hassani Sabah, he's basically who created the art of infiltration and assassination. So they would have, you know, these sleeper spies lie dormant for 20, 30 years and rise up and commit assassination. So this whole thing that we're going over tonight is essentially, at least in large part, based on the teachings of Hassani Sabah.
Correct. Well, Sun Tzu goes back at least 5,000 years, but certainly it's the same plans, and they certainly have drawn upon this. So if you know the enemy, if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you'll succumb in every battle. Now, these are some examples of this information dominance, or shall we call it message dominance? Let's say we decide, one example, we remove the words heart, attack, cardiac, arrest, and cholesterol from the English language. Let's say these words are heartophobic, okay, because hearts are gentle, hearts would never do anything wrong, and these are hateful and bigoted words. The word heart, the word attack, the word cardiac, the word arrest, and the word cholesterol, okay? So then suddenly what you have is when you try to tell the doctor what's wrong, you've got body extremism. I've got violent upper body extremism. I've got chest extremism. I have chest pain extremism. You know, what's wrong? You've got extremist things in your veins because you can't say cholesterol, okay? And then you'll have all chests are the same. They are extremists in all of them. Diet has nothing to do with thorax extremism. Extremism has no diet, okay? Hospitals that use the word hearts are racist and they are heartophobic. Heart profiling is racist. Heart textbooks can only be understood in Arabic. Then you'll start hearing this sort of nonsense which we hear today, okay? That medical diagnosis is out of context. Don't use the words heart attack. Rather say body extremism. Understand? So these words become so vague, so useless, that you cannot specify. Now, if you cannot identify the enemy, if you cannot name the enemy, think about it. What's that Patrick Little and John Minadeo name the Jew, specifically name. However, we cannot name the Muslim, to utilize that terminology of theirs. Why is that? Because what you cannot describe, you cannot define. If you cannot be specific, then you can only be general. It's like going to a general store and you can't buy anything specific. That's a joke, by the way, a small joke. So,
yeah, well, point taken. It's a great example.
okay, so the language gets twisted. The language gets it wrong. Okay, it loses the ability to describe. It loses precision. And who benefits? So now the American intelligence agencies have been overrun with this kind of nonsense. And they have accepted the enemy's definition of the enemy. So in the real world, the DHS ordered me to scrub records of Muslims with terror ties. This was Philip Haney. Okay, there's an original article. He quoted this in The Hill, the newspaper called The Hill, on the 2nd May 2016. You can look that up online. Right, I was ordered by my superiors at the Department of Homeland Security to delete or modify several hundred records of individuals tied to designated Islamic terror groups like Hamas from the federal database. Right, it goes on. I won't finish that, but look that up. Philip Haney, The Hill, 2nd of May. So he wrote a book called See Something, Say Nothing. So now here's a couple of things. Demoralization warfare. So they're utilizing control of the language. Now, there are 6 areas that any people who want to ideologically confront and control a nation have to do, right? This is using Russian doctrine. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have to attack the social order. You have to attack the family structure. You have to attack religious observance. You have to attack law enforcement. Look at the issues now where you've got cops in New York having water poured on them, disrespected, being pelted with fruit and vegetables. Look at your border. ICE is being attacked. Okay, there's no respect for the law enforcement of the country. They're just following the law. Laws put in place by Barack Obama, right? So you've got a disrespect for the law. So they have to attack the legal system, the law system. They have to attack the family. They have to attack the church. And these, because the church is the arbiter of the morals within the Western nation, just as the mosque and the imam were the creators of the morals, and the Quran were the creators of the morals in the Islamic world. Right.
Yeah,
so,
most people don't even understand that the whole concept of freedom and freedom of speech, a free nation, all of this stuff comes from Christianity. Because they don't read the Bible themselves, they think it's old foolish nonsense.
Well, they've been propagandized to believe that.
Right, and they don't grasp that, that is the foundation of everything that we consider free. So, people really need to sit down and read the Bible, especially in the New Testament.
Yeah, someone just said all the beautiful ships and boats on the French Riviera are Muslim-owned. Well, if that's true, then yeah, they're very poor and live in caves on boats.
Yeah, with box cutters, don't you know?
Yeah, maybe there's a cave in the boat. Thank you for that. So, so think about this. Now, they have to attack these underpinnings of society. However, there are typically 3 methods that they will utilize ad nauseum. These are the 3 most common, most popular methods. And when you see them, notice that this is a line of attack and it needs to be counterattacked. So the aim of the enemy is to inhibit critical analysis of the enemy, right? And they want to design arguments, mimetic arguments like memes, that inspire shame, amnesia, and irrationality. So shame, you do not examine, nor do you defend what you are ashamed of.
Lloyd, you Islamophobe.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Can I get a badge? Amnesia. You cannot be inspired by or draw from what you forgot or do not know. And irrationality. Destroy logic and evidence with rhetoric, propaganda, and emotion. The response, I've been doing extensive reading on propaganda warfare, and everyone goes, well, in 1941 and 1927, forget those books. They're old. Okay, forget those books. If you want to read them and learn how vacuum tubes work, be my guest. But we're a little bit past that technology today. So the response is to identify and relentlessly expose each related talking point as a lie. It must be exposed. The truth, simply because the the ideology is fragile. It's actually quite fragile. It is very fragile to the truth. It's like having a bucket of milk, white milk, and you just put a single drop of black ink in that milk. You cannot not see that black dot. And that's what the truth is to this. It cannot be unseen. It destroys the spell. It breaks the ideology. It just breaks the hole it has in people's brains. It causes them a lot of pain. It's like sunlight to a vampire. So they will shame you because, so the Crusades, that being, and we've discussed this at length, what a lie that is. How the Crusades were a response to nearly 500 years of assault, where 2/3 of Christendom was overrun by Muslims.
Right, and they did more than 500 attacks into Europe before we did a dozen into Islam.
Exactly. So they will shame you. So the moment you feel shame, realize you're being lied to.
Right.
Right. The moment you feel shame, the moment they're trying to shame you, think about this. That's a lie. And if you just spend 5 minutes on Google, you'll figure out these people are lying to you, and you can turn that argument around.
But Lloyd, don't you know that you're a Mossad agent and all that stuff because you're not?
I'm a jihadi, Jesuit, Jewish, African, Nogger, Mossad agent, Mossad, CIA, FBI agent,
and they've called you monkey and everything else in all of this. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I'm all of the above. I'm a Catholic as well. So okay, amnesia. Think about it. Genocide is, when people think of genocide, they think of killing, but that's actually the very final stage of like 5 or 6 stages, right? Genocide is actually gradual. The first stage is demonization, and blaming people for everything. Jews cause potholes. Jews cause toothache.
Yeah, well, okay. they do cause toothaches, didn't you know? And they produce they've produced the first candy. So,
right, yeah, Jews cause train delays. Jews make it rain on your wedding. So there's this, right? So it's demonization, which leads ultimately to physical action, right? Physical violence.
Poway shooting, for instance. So
correct, and this is exactly why it's happening, because some nutcase is going to act on that. He's going to feel justified. So the demonization leads to what they feel is justified attack. Okay,
which is it's an absolute distraction. On top of that, it's to get them to look at the wrong target.
Correct, right? So many things. And also, and then they start removing cultural symbols. They start defacing your church. They start defacing your synagogue. They start tearing down your cross. They start breaking the statues. They start removing your statue. They start changing your street names. Your street name goes from George Washington Street to Muhammad Jihad Street. Right? These things they started removing these identifiers and placing their own. So genocide, if you look at the actual definition of genocide, it's actually the removal of the identity of a culture, the erasure of a culture, not killing, erasure. Technically, the guy who created the word genocide actually regretted the definition at the end, and he's rewritten it actually. So the killing of a culture he has renamed democide.
Interesting.
Right. So now they will start to remove things like books, like words. You cannot say Islam. You can't say Sharia. You can't say this. You Islamophobe. That's shaming, right? Taking words away. And they've taken, if you look at the shrinking, actually, hold on. We need to have a look at this. Let's have a quick look here. When words disappear, a non-lexicon of terror. This is after the 9/11 Commission report. The term violent extremism appeared 3 times. The word enemy, 39. The word jihad, 126. Right, Islam appeared 322 times. The Muslim Brotherhood, 5. The word religious appeared 65 times. So let's now go to the FBI counterterrorism lexicon 4 years later, after CARE, the Muslim Brotherhood affiliate of Hamas, was very actively doing their outreach program to the American intelligence agencies. Okay, Al-Qaeda appeared 36 times, Hezbollah twice, Hamas 4, Sharia twice, Caliph 7. The term violent extremism in 4 years later, in 2008, violent extremism appeared 29 times, and the word religious appeared 3 times, and every other word there appeared 0. And we can go here. In 2009, National Intelligence Strategy document, violent extremism appeared 9. The word enemy, 0. Jihad, 0. Muslim, 0. Islam, 0. Muslim Brotherhood, 0. Religious, 1. Hamas, 0. Hezbollah, 0. Al-Qaeda, 1. Caliph, 0. Sharia, 0. Violent extremism in 2010 after Fort Hood. Violent extremism, 0. Enemy, 0. Jihad, 0. Muslim, 0. Islam, 0. The word religious did appear 59 times. Every other word, 0. These words have been removed from the American law enforcement lexicon. So if you don't have a name for it, it doesn't exist. So now notice though, a small point to make, slander in Islamic Sharia, which appears in section G 2.5. If you notice something bad about a Muslim, it is unlawful to mention it, as this is slander. Slander in the West is when you say something untrue about someone.
Right.
But if you notice something bad, it is unlawful to mention it, as this is slander. So in Islam, if you say something that is correct and true, but it brings embarrassment, that is slander. So gibba means to mention anything concerning a person that he would dislike. The determining factor is mentioning about a person what he would not like said. That is, keep that in mind. So we are now being demystified, or at least the law enforcement agencies are being demystified. They're operating under Sharia. Okay. So moving forward. So now if you have amnesia, you are disoriented. You are unable to orient upon events because you cannot ascribe meaning to those events. You cannot recognize friends and you cannot recognize foes. You cannot identify or respond to threats because you don't know what's what. You have no social cues to respond to, and you have no memory to draw from. You are then very, very vulnerable, and you have a complete lack of awareness. And so they have removed the enemy image. You have a critical denial of the enemy image. They've achieved information dominance. The way to fight that, because so you have totalitarianism and you have totalism. Totalism is fragile. These are totalists. You be that little drop of ink in that little black drop of ink in that bucket of milk, and they cannot not see that little drop of black ink.
Interesting.
Anything from you?
No, we only have a little bit of time left, so we should just keep cranking through this. I mean, it's very obviously I've read this document 4 or 5 times now, but it's still highly enlightening information. And lots of people in the audience haven't seen this information before. What I see in the audience is a lot of people waking up to how deep the infiltration and the level of deception is within Islam with the taqiyya and all of that. I mean, all of this is essentially taqiyya.
Yep. Let me, as we start winding down, so diverting frustrations and hatred to a new target, blame the Jews. The most powerful strategy of demoralization is a diversion. Okay, so you undermine the active hatred of the enemy because you cannot identify the enemy. You can't use the word Islam and Muslim, and you can't talk about the Sharia. So because that enemy becomes vague and fuzzy and unavailable, you find another enemy and they'll give you one, right? So you will then find a new object because the present antagonist ceases to matter because you have no words for it, you have no concept of it, and they'll direct that. So there are two things. You will direct it onto yourself, that stress, that frustration, you'll direct onto yourself, and 2, you'll direct it onto something else. And in this case, we are being instructed to, and lots of people are complying with this with incredible enthusiasm, is directing it onto the Jews. Now, another thing that you must realize is that when things are happening, when things are going wrong in your neighborhood, right, when things are going wrong in your country, the first thing, obviously, you feel frustration. The problem is that when you have no outlet for that frustration affects you personally. You start to feel demoralized. You start to feel depression. But there's a specific set of predictable psychological outcomes of this. You will start to feel isolated. You start to feel despair. This is intended, right? And therefore, when you feel isolated, when you withdraw, when you feel that despair, you don't unify with others. You don't join with others. You feel alone. So you never unite to fight against the problem because that ability to speak about it's been taken away. So they realize they're creating this fragmented, disunified group that cannot ever get together.
It's like, it's like Eric Blair, George Orwell's Newspeak. You can't even use the terms. It's the ultimate form of communism, and what Aldous Huxley and the whole gang at the CIA were promoting through the 60s counterculture revolution.
Yes. So the way to fight this, there are numerous simple ways to fight this, but just know the facts, speak the truth. Right? Be the one that speaks up. Make the post, make the comment. Look it up. When you feel shame, you're being lied to. When there's a broad stroke, a very vague, broad statements are lies, accept it as that. Just accept broad statements are lies, err on the side of caution there. Right? Broad statements are trying to brush over the details, trying to ignore the facts, the details, the tiny details. Look into that. When you have amnesia, when you see an example of amnesia, look into it, get the facts, educate yourself. They're trying to deny you critical information. That information will change your mind, and it will change someone else's mind. When you speak up, you inspire others to speak up, right? And simply just knowing the facts, the documents are available to you. You can all read this. It's 35 pages long, okay? So identify and name the enemy. Identify and name his strategies, list his arguments and talking points, and undermine each one. In the previous episode, we took the Talmud. We identified each of the false arguments. We laid out, this is the argument, this is what actually says in the Talmud. So we were able to identify both the lies and the liars. They lose credibility. And how we see fewer and fewer of those lies posted online now, because it's gone out into the general community. And there's more of that coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, I welcome it,
So the one or two small things I'll touch on, but I've finished that section of the document. Do you have any comments or questions?
No, I don't. And what do you think about doing? I did want to ask you if you would like to do a part 2 just covering this document. I think it's important.
Yeah, then we can dive deeper into the specifics of the document. Certainly, if you have another look at it, and we can identify areas and we can expand upon and talk into depth. Yeah. So let me touch on. So yeah, this is introducing a new idea. So I've just read. I don't even remember everything in the document. I'm not as familiar with it because I've been collecting it. But notice you have Hizb Tahrir. Okay. Majid Nawaz used to belong to them, and I think so did Anjum Chowdhury at one point. Notice the whole world, whether it is the Islamic countries or non-Islamic countries, are either Dar al-Islam or Dar al-Harb, and there is no third. Either there's the House of Islam or the House of War. This is a major group in the UK, right? And this is how they view the world, the House of War. And if you read through their manifestos, they are making war against the world, political and social change to impose their will. This is the Al-Qaeda lone wolf document, lone wolf security document, where they teach their lone wolf operatives, because you have these packs of lone wolves that all seem to have one thing in common. Notice, we thank Allah that He has chosen us in this particular time in history where millions are sitting and neglecting jihad and fighting for the religion. They believe that everyone should be fighting. Now, jihad is the word here is fighting, right? So they have a document called Safety and Security Guidelines for Lone Wolf Mujahideen and Small Cells. They are infiltrating and they're building and training cells in the States. If you look at the Tet Offensive, I think 1972, 73, I can't remember the exact date, North Vietnam infiltrated small 4 or 5 man cells into South Vietnam, and they all, hundreds of them, activated at a given time, and they started doing acts of violence, sabotage, and so on. This is probably what they intend to do. And I'll give you some specifics. Let's go to the ISIS document. As you know, ISIS are Sunni Jews. Forgive my sarcasm, okay?
Oh.
It's just that I can't believe the level of stupidity I've got to read in the comments.
Oh yeah. Well,
not to the
but
I haven't actually read the comments.
Here's the thing though, Lloyd, is don't you know that no matter what the Muslims do, they're never responsible for anything. They're the victim of the Jews.
I know, and yeah, their books. The fact that they're acting 100% in accordance with what Muhammad did, with what Muhammad said, with what Allah said, with what's in their books, and none of that matters. Yeah, that's. So anyway, so here, tactics, this is the ISIS document, and they talk of just terror tactics or the subheading of hostage taking. So they want you to, the sunnah of inflicting a slaughter upon the kuffar was ordered by Allah, which is a Jewish God. So the sunnah is the way of Muhammad, of inflicting, or the way of inflicting slaughter upon the kafir was ordered by Allah when he said, when you meet those who disbelieve, strike their necks, right? And acquisition of fire. So you must take hostages. They say, hold large numbers of the kafir hostage, okay? So the object is to create as much carnage and terror as one possibly can. And the enemies of Allah storm his location and succeed in killing him, right? So in other words, take hostages. So kill, stab, slit throats, chop off heads, flatten them under trucks, burn them alive, and so on. Okay, so they want you to take, so they go through this document. The scenario is that one assaults a busy, public, and enclosed location, rounds up the kafir that are present, gain control over the victims, and then proceed to slaughter as many of them as possible. They even talk about the Bataclan. They talk of low light, use low light venues so that it's harder to see you and to kill you. They talk about acquiring firearms. This is the ideal target locations for hostage scenarios include nightclubs, movie theaters, busy shopping malls, large stores, popular restaurants, concert halls, university campuses, public swimming pools, indoor ice skating rooms, and generally any busy or enclosed area that allows you to take control of the situation, round up the kafir inside, and you can massacre them while using the building as a defense against any responding force. And they mentioned low light conditions.
Get your CCW, folks. I mean, you should be prepared for anything.
Get training, get armed. But the thing is, if we can talk about this, if we can talk to our politicians to take action, if we can drain the swamp, if we can boost the morale of, just change the national will, change the national discussion, get this in the open. These people can no longer hide in the shadows like they are. Simply by talking about it.
Seeking Truth in Christ just made a valid point, and thanks for the super chat. He says, Neo-Christianity, notice the word Neo-Christianity, shuns judging right and wrong. That is absolutely correct. And of course...
Well, correct. That is a communist thing in that, remember, everyone's equal. But they don't specify how, but everyone's equal. And for you to discriminate, in this case means to tell the difference between, would be to make things unequal. So that's a communist imposition on Christianity by altering Christianity according to communist doctrine and corrupting it, yes. So to discriminate is to make a difference between, and then, well, everyone's equal, but then everyone can't be, if we make discrimination.
Right.
I'm going to stop sharing at this point. So that was me doing the 5-cent version of, any comments or thoughts from your side? Because we would rather talk about the issue, get it dealt with on a political level and on a social level before we have to start using large amounts of bullets to deal with it.
Correct. Obviously the goal here is to wake people up that there's been a massive bait and switch going on, and people are duped into thinking that this is the religion of peace. And of course, Lloyd and I have covered what the religion of peace means. It means that after the Islamists have killed or subjugated all of the kafir or non-believers, then the world will be in peace. And so you have to understand that it's not peaceful because they're going around like hippies at the Pentagon, from Bernie what's-his-name spreading flowers and putting them in the Marines' rifles. They are, it's the religion of peace because they force you to either become a Muslim or you are murdered.
Yeah, so after the entire world is taken over by Islam, then there'll be peace. But look at the Muslim world right now. They don't even like each other.
Right.
And don't forget Tacitus, the Roman general, I believe, said it many years ago. They've made a desolation and they called it peace. So after everyone's dead. Yeah, so that's effectively that's the introduction to the idea of the ideological warfare, and the Muslim Brotherhood has massive political reach. I mean, they've got massive amounts of money, and the OIC needs to be looked at as well. These are things we're all pulling together.
Right.
The organized Islamic.
So, somebody's pointing out in the chat that we're trying to absolve their own responsibility for looking at porn from the Jews creating it, and of course they use these sweeping generalizations.
Well, think about it.
Hugh Hefner was Swedish and German and English. Sorry, go ahead.
Prostitution is said to be the oldest profession, right? So I think it's been around since a little bit before the 20th century.
Right, yeah, exactly. You know, what they want to do is, like, they want to blame the Jews because they can't control their
Think about
own
it.
porn
That's an
habit.
example of, that's a talking point. That is not a considered intelligent point of view.
Well,
or an
it's
argument.
complete lack of intelligence and responsibility of one's own actions.
Right. So think about it. That's a broad stroke, right? So if we start
The Jews create all porn. There's no other races involved in the making and the, you know, shooting of it, etc. Right?
Think about it. I mean, that's incoherent. This is clearly, you know, what's fascinating? I use my real name online, and then you've got Mr. Winterbottom over there.
No, well, Mr. Winters, he's actually cool. Don't worry about him. It's the other one up above.
So, okay, I don't know who. Anyway, that's. So sorry about that. Where am I?
Mr. Winters actually donated $37 tonight. And by the way, thanks everybody, and you know, put up your super chats if you have any questions. We're just wrapping it up now, so we appreciate, of course, any support.
It's on my other screen and it's pretty far away. Yeah, so you've got, so look at broad strokes of lies. So, and they have to use this because the arguments are so weak, right? The arguments are so weak. I mean, it's easy to destroy the slavery argument, the Crusades argument. It's ridiculously simple now once you know.
Lloyd, we didn't touch on this one. Do you want to hit this now or maybe next time? USS Liberty.
You know what? Let's maybe just touch on that later.
All right.
I'd love to, but let's touch on that later and give it a thorough treatment because we're going to take another toy away from these idiots.
You know, you're going to have a bunch of kids, you know, throwing temper tantrums on the wall with their fists banging the floor, you know.
I've noticed in my online escapades recently that there's a lot of the old arguments that we're using a few weeks ago before we finished our series that are no longer being used, arguments that are no longer appearing online. I'm finding this, right? And which is interesting to see. And now there's fewer arguments and they have to lean on them harder and shout them louder. But the USS Liberty, they always only say the following, like 5 words. What about the USS Liberty? What about the USS Liberty?
What about usury? What about porn? Those are the top 3 things on their laundry list. You know, all porn is the fault of Jews. The USS Liberty, the fault of the Jews. Usury, you know, the fault of the Jews. And never mind that there's more money available at you know, here's the interesting thing is if you actually take a loan out, that's how you get the usury. But if you take a loan out and pay it back within a certain amount of time, you get that money for free. You know, so you can use that money and invest it for free. But I think interest rates are the lowest in history right now.
It's called banking. And a lot of people that suffered are people with very low financial literacy who were making bad bets. But sure, look, life is, I mean, look, I've done well. Hey, whatever. But look, yeah, so you always see this very short, what about the USS Liberty? Always that, no detail, no corroborating information. Well, I happened to go and find that information. There were 12 inquests into that incident, 12 military inquests. And yeah, the answers are not, it's not going to make people happy, okay? The people pushing that argument enjoy it for the next little while.
You got a couple weeks left, folks, and then you know we're gonna take your porno argument away. We're gonna take them all away. Yeah, and then you're gonna be left. You know, only you're gonna have to take responsibility for your own porno habit after that. I mean, then what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I know. The Jews made me enjoy myself. Sorry.
Oh, now we're gonna be apologists for it all. You know.
No, look, I mean, this hatred directed towards the Jews is reprehensible, and it's not Christian, right? It's and these are people that are, it's just wrong.
Well, and Jesus says in Luke, what is it, Luke 23, Father, they don't know what they do, please forgive them. So why are people who call themselves Jews unable to forgive the couple of hundred Jews that were there? And of course, all the Jews are to blame. And then, you know, when you think about how they're persecuted for 2,000 years, and then suddenly they fight back, then it's like, whoa, look at what the Jews are doing. They're fighting back. You know, it's like, well, look how you've treated them for, for 2,000 years. And is that
Correct.
going to bring them to Christ? We need to treat them, we need to lead by example in Christ to bring them to Christ.
Correct. No, agreed. I mean, so that history, that's another toy that can be taken away from them because of the lies. And these things need to be examined and discussed openly. And I mean, these guys remember, they've had message dominance. They've had information dominance for decades now.
Well, since 1890s, essentially, right?
Yeah, we've stolen it back. Look at the whole Talmud thing. We've stolen it back, right? They can still lie about it, but that argument.
But Lloyd, you and I are Jewish Talmudic Mossad agents, and
no, I just happen to read the actual book.
Oh, but there's a secret Talmud that they can't provide, and then one of them today was, well, you have to be a Hebrew expert to read the quotes. And I was like, okay, idiot, where did you get the quotes from that you pretend are there?
Yeah,
they couldn't even understand that they had to, and I was like, so you can't use like Google Translate or Chrome browser that has a translate button at the top to check the translation?
No, so those aren't so when I'm quoting stuff out of the Talmud, those aren't accurate translations. Those are the English-friendly ones. Okay, so can you send me the accurate one that you're using? Because as far as I can tell, you're using the same one I am. So yeah, it makes no sense. It's actually ridiculous. No, look, I mean, we're going to be taking their toys away one by one. This is
so what they, and so Kigo P says, I agree, but there are some really bad Jews out there. There are some really bad of every group, and each one who does bad, hold that one person responsible for their own actions. You don't use a sweeping generalization fallacy. The Jews are responsible for porn. It's like, my friend Tony, who, became a Christian, he's responsible for porn because of, what's his name? I forget, in the porn industry. And it's like, come on, Ronnie, whatever his name is in porno. So this is the type of logic they use. And then it's like, it's a circumstantial ad hominem attack, the Jews. So you start out with a fallacy and then a sweeping generalization, and then you lack the common sense to go and verify all of the primaries.
Well, look, there's 16 million Jews roughly on the entire planet. There's 100 million members of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right. And so who should we fear, 100 million or 16 million?
Right. Now think of this. You hear the argument, what about the KKK? Like, what about them? The entire US today has less than 5,700 members. Right? Now let's look at one of the organizations that belong to the Muslim Brotherhood, ICNA, the Islamic Circle of North America. Every year they hold a conference. That conference has 50,000 members every year for 2 days. That's one of the organizations. That organization has membership in the six figures. They have a 2-day conference that brings 50,000 plus members. So now you're talking about, this is one Muslim Brotherhood organization. And in there, the reason I use the ICNA is that I've shown this on the screen before in the previous Islamic episode. They teach their children, their teenagers, their little boys and girls, that jihad is fighting against the kafir in the way of Allah, is dying in the way of Allah, killing in the way of Allah. This is in their little Sunday, we have Sunday school, they've got the madrasa. This is what they teach in their manual. I have a copy of it, right? So this is what they teach. So should we worry about that 5,700 that people laugh at, that have no political power, or these 100,000+ members of just one organization?
100+ million, you mean?
No. ICNA alone is
over. Sorry. Okay, I thought you meant the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right. And the Muslim Brotherhood has a membership in the 100 million, right? Adherents and members. Their membership is about 3 million, I think. Actual members, about 3 million. I mean, no one knows exactly, but it's high.
It's crazy.
So
all right.
We shouldn't worry about that. These numbers. I mean, look at these numbers and let's ignore that. Let's ignore the giant in the room. Let's go find the ant.
And never mind, they're streaming in and being flown in and everything else, and taking over communities and local city halls and things like that to promote Sharia, and it's all this tiptoe totalitarianism stuff. And what people don't get is that the Old Testament forms the foundation of Western law. And if you get rid of that, then they have a foundation to bring in Chrislam and
Well,
Sharia law.
well, think about it. They talk about the Jews as if the Jews are not the Old Testament. And the Old Testament is referenced directly 855 times by the apostles in the New Testament and by Jesus, and indirectly an additional, well, it totals about 1,153 times.
And most people don't get that Jesus and the apostles were Jews and they're worshiping truth. So, it's like when you say the Jews, are you blaspheming against Jesus and the apostles as well? So
And all the
stop and
of,
think for a second.
Yeah, and all the authors of the books of the New Testament were all Jews except for Luke.
Right, exactly. So a
so
lot to take in and digest there before we use all these fallacious, sweeping generalizations and spout all of this neo-Nazi Islamic, rhetoric. And, it's literally propaganda, and people are just so bought into it. And it's like, well, Jan Irvin flipped because he fact-checked it all and realized that all of the Talmud quotes were bogus. It's like, no, I opened the Talmud and I started studying it and verifying it, and it was, these quotes are crap. And who's that reverend that was spreading that stuff around? That priest, the Catholic guy, the guy.
Wiles? Oh, Panitis.
Right. So, and I will get that document done soon. It's just, as I was getting to a point where I was ready to wrap it up, I found like another 50 of these quotes that.
There's no rush. Don't do all of them, but there's no rush. But I mean, it's being looked at. It's being dealt with. We will get there. Because look, once we come out and once we publish everything, once we put this all out there, these people won't have a leg to stand on. They're going to look as stupid as they are.
They're going to be left to, flying blimps over the San Francisco Bay that say Jews eat babies. That's going to be their whole thing.
Get Brother Nathaniel on your show. He has a unique perspective. He's dead. And he talked a lot of, starts with a B, ends with T. Sorry. So, yeah.
Or maybe we should get Heiko Moffman,
Yeah, maybe we should. No one's mentioned him to me in recent time. It's crazy that a lot of these arguments have just disappeared.
I had somebody quote some of his crap to me last week, and I was just like, look, did you verify? And of course it was unsighted. I said, did you verify these passages in the Talmud yourself? And of course they hadn't. It was just clips of Heiko Moffman saying that this stuff exists and that's what they believe. And they don't even, we explain this, and then we'll wrap this up, but we explain this early on, the difference between third-hand, second-hand, and primary citations. The primary citation is the actual document itself. A secondary citation is someone talking about the document itself, and a third-hand citation is someone talking about the person who's talking about the primary documentation. So you get these people who cite, second and third-hand citations. E. Michael Jones only speaks the gospel truth. Heiko Moffman only speaks the gospel truth. And by the way, I have his books behind me, and I've, gone through a lot of that as well. But you have to verify the sources that they're using on your own all the way to the primary, all the way to the end until there's nothing left to fact check.
Yeah,
don't just a sec. Don't cite a second or third hand source and then pretend that you've proved the argument. Go to the primaries. What were you saying?
There's others as well. Peter Schaefer. I mean, people mention him, and I mean, if you read other scholars' views of Peter Schaefer, he gets brutalized by the scholars because, man, he's stretching. He's really reaching.
And he's also, creating a big attack against Christianity as well there. So,
well, there you go. Yes. So this is, I think people need to think about secret societies. Look, I know we didn't talk about the Illuminati Bigfoot Alliance. I know you wanted us to, but I did speak about an actual organization with real people that actually exists. And we have primary source documents, not a secret document that's locked up in Area 51 in a vault.
Right. You get thousands and thousands of pages that have been released of this stuff by the FBI that are publicly available to anyone. So,
and that's a real secret society that is very, very shadowy and very dangerous.
All right, Lloyd, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure you want to get to bed. It's late where you're at, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you those who posted up Super Chats tonight. Please go to the website, logosmedia.com. Support the show there. You can also get a subscription to the last 11 years worth of shows up there. Also, please be aware that the primary channel was demonetized, so we greatly appreciate any support we can get. So anyway, logosmedia.com. If you want to throw Lloyd any support, Lloyd, what is your email address again?
For PayPal, I'll post it. Good grief. aldeong_pl@outlook.com. PL for Poland. I'll post in the.
All right. We'll wait for that, and then we'll sign off and say goodnight, everyone. And thank you so much. Somebody just said they found our shows on Castaneda with Jay Fikes. Of course, we exposed that whole fraud. LDE Young at _PL@outlook.com if you would like to send Lloyd donations. And of course, again, logosmedia.com. Hit the super chat down there. And also Patreon. We can greatly use the support. Thank you so much, and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed that.